My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, and now she's claiming half of our $500, $0 estate, despite secretly transferring it to her sister last year to hide her affair. I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling that something was off. You know that feeling when you just sense that your life is about to flip upside down, but you can't quite put your finger on why. That's how it began. My wife Lisa and I had been married for 10 years. We had a nice house, 2 kids, good jobs, everything looked perfect from the outside. But I started noticing little things. She'd be secretive on her phone, hiding her screen when I walked into the room. She'd come home late from work more often, saying she had meetings or client dinners, but I caught her in little lies, nothing concrete yet, just enough to make me suspicious. Then came the day I found the first real clue. It was a random Thursday evening, and I was cleaning out her purse because she had forgotten it at home. I found a receipt tucked in. Her wallet, a hotel near downtown, one I'd never seen before. The date, 2 nights ago. My stomach sank. I looked up the hotel online and it was a boutique place, pricey. That was strange. I wasn't snooping really, but something about it felt wrong. I decided to do a little digging. I checked her phone records, her messages, and her social media. Nothing obvious yet, but I kept feeling like I was missing something. A few days later, I caught her in a lie about her whereabouts. She said she was at a book club with her friends, but I saw her car parked at a different location, an apartment complex I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she got defensive, snapped at me, and said I was paranoid. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to connect the dots. That's when I noticed a pattern. She was acting secretive, avoiding me, and her phone was glued to her hand more than usual. I knew something was going on, but I didn't want to believe it. Not my wife, Lisa. She'd always been the perfect wife, bitchy at times, yes, but loyal, or so I thought. Then one day I decided to follow her. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had to see for myself. I waited until she left for work, then I followed her in my car. She drove straight to that same apartment complex I saw her near before. I parked a block away and watched her go inside. She stayed for about an hour, then came out looking flustered, got into her car, and drove home. I was stunned. I felt my chest tighten. I had proof, enough to be sure something was happening. That's when everything changed. I realized I'd been blind, making excuses for her, telling myself it was just work stress or some kind of phase. But this was more than that. This was betrayal. The woman I loved was cheating on me with our neighbor, Mark. The details didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I finally knew the truth. I remember sitting in my driveway that evening, just staring at the house, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd seen and what it meant for us. Lisa had always been a bit of a bitch, sharp-tongued, demanding, sometimes downright mean, but I never thought she'd betray me like this. Not after 10 years. I kept telling myself she was probably just stressed, maybe bored, maybe looking for some excitement. But deep down, I knew better. I knew I was losing her, and I was furious about it. The next morning, I decided I couldn't let her keep lying to me. I had to confront her. I woke up early and waited until she was in the shower. I grabbed my phone, took pictures of her car at that apartment complex, and collected all the evidence I could. Then I sat down and waited for her to come out. When she finally stepped into the bedroom, I looked her straight in the eyes. "Lisa, I know what you've been doing," I said, my voice cold but steady. She froze, eyes wide, then started to lie. "What are you talking about? You're crazy. I've been working late, that's all." She looked so convincing with her bitchy smirk, but I wasn't buying it. I laid the pictures on the bed, her face blanched. She stammered, "That's not what it looks like. You're overreacting. It's just sex, it does mean anything." I felt my blood boil. I knew her too well. She always had a way of spinning her stories, making herself the victim. I didn't yell, but my voice was firm. "Don't lie to me, Lisa. I saw your car. I saw you coming out of that apartment. Who is Mark? Are you sleeping with him?" Her eyes flickered and she looked like she wanted to say something, then changed her mind. She snapped at me, "You're just jealous. You're imagining things. I don't know what you want me to say." That was her typical tactic: deny, deflect, blame me for being paranoid. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had proof. The betrayal cut deep. I could feel my stomach turning, a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How long had this been going on? Was it just that night, or had it been happening for months? I didn't want to believe she could do this, not after all these years. But there it was, her lies, her secret life. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was furious at her, but I also felt a crushing sense of heartbreak. How could she do this? To me, to our family. I wanted to scream, wanted to cry, but I held it all in. I had to keep my composure, at least for now. I told her I needed some space, that I'd think about everything. She sneered and said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous and insecure. That's when I realized how manipulative she could be. She always knew how to turn things around, make herself the victim. But this time I saw through her. The woman I married was a liar, a cheat, and a bitch who dragged our life through the mud just for a bit of fun with Mark. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that my world was shattering, and I had to figure out how to pick up the pieces and somehow get revenge. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind kept circling back to Lisa's lies and that damn affair. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly pretty damn angry. I started thinking about what I could do, how I could turn this around and make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her walk all over me. No way. That's when I decided I needed a plan, a way to get revenge that would hit her where it hurt most: her ego, her reputation, and her sense of security. First, I dug into the finances. I found out that last year, Lisa had secretly transferred half of our estate, about $250, to her sister, Jenny. She'd done it quietly, probably thinking I wouldn't notice. I was furious. She'd been hiding her affair, and now she was trying to protect herself financially. I realized she was planning to leave, or at least make sure she'd be taken care of no matter what happened. I couldn't believe she'd go behind my back like that, especially with our estate. I felt like I'd been punched again. How could she betray me this way? I'd worked hard for that money, and now she was trying to hide her tracks. I also found out that she'd been lying about her relationship with Mark. She told everyone they were just friends, just neighbors who helped each other out. But I had proof they'd been sleeping together for months. I did want to confront her again right away. I wanted her to sweat, to realize I was onto her. I decided I'd keep quiet for now, gather more evidence, and then strike back in a way she wouldn't see coming. Meanwhile, I started talking to a lawyer about my options. I wanted to make sure I was protected if things got ugly. I also began secretly talking to some of her friends, trying to gauge how much she'd told them about her affair. It was a delicate game. I didn't want her to catch wind of my plans, but I also knew I had to do something big. I wasn't just going to let her take my money and walk away. If she thought she was going to leave with half of everything, I was going to make sure she paid a price. That's when I came up with a plan. I'd wait until she was least expecting it, then reveal everything: her affair, her secret transfer of the estate, her lies. I'd make her realize that she couldn't just cheat and get away with it. I'd expose her, humiliate her, and make her regret ever crossing me. I knew I had the upper hand now. She thought she was clever, hiding her affair and her money, but I was going to turn the tables. I was going to make her wish she'd never messed with me. That's the kind of revenge I was planning: cold, calculated, and ultimately devastating. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she paid every last penny, emotionally and financially. The more I thought about it, the clearer my plan became. Lisa had always been manipulative, but now I saw her for what she truly was: a liar and a cheat who thought she could get away with everything. Her bitchy attitude, her sneaky lies, her secret affairs, everything was laid bare, and I was determined not to let her walk all over me anymore. I spent nights poring over the details: how to make her regret the choices she'd made, how to turn her own game against her. I decided I needed to hit her where it hurt most: her ego, her reputation, and her finances. First, I contacted my lawyer and got everything in order. We drafted a plan to confront her with all the evidence, but I wanted to do it in a way that would maximize the emotional impact. I didn't want just a shouting match. I wanted her to see that I was in control. I also started gathering proof of her transfer of funds to Jenny, with the hope of using it to challenge her claim to the estate. One evening, I invited Lisa to sit down with me. I told her I had something important to discuss. She looked suspicious, of course, but she played it cool. I pulled out the evidence, photos of her coming out of that apartment, the receipts, the bank statements. Her face turned white when she saw the proof of her transfer to Jenny. I watched her try to spin her usual lies, but I was ready. "You've been lying to me," I said calmly. "You've been cheating, hiding money, and trying to cover your tracks. I know everything." Her bitchy smirk faded, replaced by a look of panic. She started to deny everything, but I cut her off. "Don't bother. I've got enough evidence. And I know about the transfer to Jenny. That's a violation. You're not getting half of our estate because you secretly gave it away last year trying to hide your affair." Her eyes widened and she started to scream, "You're overreacting. This isn't fair. I deserve." "Deserve what?" I interrupted her. "You've been screwing around with Mark, lying to me and trying to steal our money. You think you can just screw me over and walk away? Not a chance. I'm taking everything into account now. You're not getting a dime, Lisa, and I'll see to it that everyone knows what kind of person you really are." She looked furious, then desperate. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of trying to ruin her. But I didn't care. I'd finally exposed her, and that was all that mattered. I could see her losing control, and honestly, it felt good, like I was finally taking back what she'd tried to steal from me. That night, I realized the game had shifted. She was no longer the manipulative wife I'd known. She was cornered, and her lies were crumbling. I knew I had to be careful from here on out, but I also knew I'd won a crucial battle. She was no longer in control. She'd pushed too far, and now it was my turn to exact some serious revenge. The fallout was immediate and intense after I laid everything out on the table. Lisa's bitchy facade cracked, and for the first time I saw her truly panic. She tried to spin it again, saying I was crazy, accusing me of stalking her, claiming I was jealous and paranoid over nothing. But I had all the evidence. Her lies, her affair, the secret transfer of our estate. She couldn't deny it anymore. The look in her eyes was pure rage mixed with fear, and that gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. I told her I wasn't going to just let her walk away with half of what we'd built. I'd already contacted my lawyer, and we were preparing to challenge her claim to the estate. I made it clear I was going to fight her every step of the way. She screamed at me, calling me a controlling asshole, saying I was ruining her life. Her words stung, but I kept my cool. I knew this was just her desperation showing. She'd always been good at lying, but now I saw through her like glass. In the days that followed, I started to implement my revenge. First, I made sure everyone knew about her affair, mutual friends, her family, even some of the neighbors. I wanted her to feel exposed, humiliated. Then I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried anything else sneaky. The more I learned, the more I realized how much she'd been manipulating everyone around her. She'd spun a web of lies, and I was the one tearing it apart. I also secretly contacted Jenny, her sister. I told her about Lisa's transfer of the estate and her affair. Jenny was furious. She didn't know her sister had been cheating or that she'd secretly given away half our money. I told her I'd be contesting the transfer, and I warned her that Lisa had been hiding a lot of stuff. Jenny promised to help, and I could tell she was just as angry about Lisa's betrayal as I was. That was a small victory, getting someone on my side, someone who could help me hit Lisa where it hurt. Meanwhile, Lisa was spiraling. She started throwing tantrums, accusing me of trying to ruin her life, but I didn't care. I knew exactly how to push her buttons now. I started leaking little bits of information to her friends, making sure they knew what she'd been up to. I wanted her to feel isolated, cornered, and helpless. The more she tried to deny everything, the more her lies unraveled. I was slowly dismantling her carefully constructed facade. All this time, I kept thinking about the estate, about how she tried to hide her affair and her secret transfer. I knew I had to be smart about how I handled the legal side of things. I wasn't just going to fight her for the money. I wanted to make sure she paid for her betrayal. I was planning to have her served with papers, challenge her claim, and make her realize she couldn't manipulate her way out of this. I was finally in control, and I was going to make sure she paid for everything she'd done. The revenge was just beginning, and I was determined to see it through to the bitter end. The day I finally served Lisa with the legal papers was one of the sweetest moments of my life, probably the sweetest. Seeing her face drain of color as she realized I was serious, that I had all the evidence, and that I was not backing down, felt like a victory I'd been waiting for. She screamed, called me every name in the book, accused me of ruining her life, but I didn't care. I knew I had her cornered now. All her lies, her manipulations, her sneaky attempts to hide her affair, and her secret transfer of the estate, they all backfired on her. The court proceedings were a nightmare for her. She tried to claim she was entitled to half of everything because she was my wife, but the evidence was overwhelming. The transfer to Jenny was illegal, and her affair with Mark was the final nail. The judge agreed that her actions were deceitful, and she was ordered to return the money she secretly took. I also managed to freeze her assets temporarily, making sure she couldn't just run away with any more of our money. Watching her squirm, seeing her bitchy attitude crumble into desperation, felt like justice served cold. In the end, I got to keep the majority of our estate. Lisa's reputation was shattered, and she was left with nothing but her lies and her bitterness. She moved out of the house, screaming at me, calling me a monster. But I knew I'd done what was necessary. I didn't want revenge just for the money, though that was sweet. I wanted her to understand that cheating and lying come with consequences. I wanted her to realize that you can't manipulate your way through life and expect no repercussions. Looking back, I've learned a lot from this mess. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what's yours. Lisa thought she could hide her affair and steal from me, but she was wrong. I fought back with everything I had, and in the end, I won. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but I'm finally starting to move on. To anyone out there dealing with a cheating spouse or betrayal, know this: don't let them get away with it. Gather your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's yours. Sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about making them realize they can't screw you over and get away with it. Life's tough and people can be worse, but if you stand your ground, you can come out the other side stronger. I did, and I have my peace now.